Hello everyone, my name is Emma Vickers and I'm the Head of Pathway Development at Tailwind England. I'm going to spend the next 10 to 15 minutes just essentially going over our new framework, which we are about to publish. The framework is called the 3Bs and it's all centered around early skill recognition and talent identification in very young new up-and-coming players. So let me begin to share my screen and I will provide you with a bit of a summary on what the framework is, why we pulled it together, and how you might wish to use it in your environments and where you can access those the content and the videos that come with the framework as well. So before we start, one of the things I'd like you to start thinking about is when should involvement in table tennis start? And what early skills and behaviours do you feel are maybe an indication of a player having potential within the sport of table tennis? So spotting potential is no easy challenge. But if you can reflect just for a moment on maybe past players that you have seen, worked with, have been in your sessions, and have gone on to progress somewhat in the sport, what is it that they possessed or showed in those very, very initial early playing days? So just a moment to reflect on that, because this is essentially what the framework is going to look at. So the 3Bs framework is a talent identification framework. So what is talent ID? It's probably a term you hear quite a lot, but maybe you aren't quite familiar with what we actually mean when we talk about talent identification. So when we talk about talent ID, we talk about the process of recognizing players that have the potential to progress and play at a high level within our sport. However, what I would like to stress is I would like to use the word talent very loosely, and I prefer to think of this framework more as a early recognition of skills and behaviours that are important within the sport of table tennis that will help a player to progress within the sport. So obviously spotting when a young player has potential is challenging, but what we have done over the past year when we have developed this framework is we've come up with a couple of areas, common factors that we've found that we feel a number of players show when they are progressing within the sport of table tennis. So the 3Bs are basic physical fundamentals. So when we talk about fundamentals, it's obviously essential that players have a strong foundation to support the development of table tennis, very specific skills. Bat skills and coordination is B2, and these are basic skills that involve bat and ball, essentially what our sport is all about, and how players can coordinate various parts of their body when performing table tennis skills. And then the last one is behaviours. So physical and technical skills are important within our sport, but like any sport, there are certain behaviours and characteristics that can help a player to accelerate their progression. So although these can be developed over time, initial signs of these behaviours can be important and are included within the framework as well. Okay, so the framework, what is it? Why have we produced it? So essentially it's to assist those delivering table tennis to players in the very, very early days. It's actually for use with players as young as 5 to 8. Typically, this is about the time we would expect a player to start playing table tennis if they are going to go ahead and progress in the sport, maybe become part of the England talent pathway. Typically, you would expect a player to initiate the sport within this time frame. So there's no expectation that every player will be able to execute all of the skills within this framework. Obviously, it's not really used as a checklist, and if a player doesn't have all of the identified skills and behaviours, they can't progress. It's really used to help identify, use as a guide in more of an informal sense. Equally, if we do observe a player performing all of these skills really, really well, it doesn't always equate to guarantee success and progression in sport. Obviously, it's a very unique combination of factors that help a player to progress to become part of the England talent pathway. But please do use this document and the content in these videos as a guide to support progression, but not to discount. So when would you use the 3Bs? So the information in this framework could be used in a number of different ways, including at the end of introductory programs such as TT Kids. Maybe you want a way to almost assess whether players are ready to move into a club program. You might run a session which includes a number of these different activities. Perhaps you're running a talent ID session or a player recruitment event in your environment with quite new players. Then you might want to again use a number of the activities that are discussed within the framework. So there are quite a lot of activities discussed, and unless you've got a full day with players, it might be difficult to execute all of the activities. However, you may be able to split this across 2 to 3 sessions, or provide a selection of activities to your liking from the framework. So in terms of how the framework is structured, there are activities, and we talk about what that is in written words, but also it's obviously there is a video as well to help demonstrate and show that activity in progress, and I will go on to talk a bit more about what that looks like. Also included in the framework are observations. So observations include details on what essentially good practice might look like when a young player is executing that specific skill. So it could indicate a player has the appropriate skills to transition to the next stage of their development. As I said, there are videos to accompany this, and there are also examples within the videos of young players within this age bracket performing those activities as well. So there are 18 activities included across B1 and B2. In B3, there are no specific activities as such, more some key questions that you might want to ask yourself. Is my player showing passion? Are they showing resilience? But there are very specific questions that might help you understand if they are showing that behaviour. So B1 includes a number of activities. So for example, balance, essential in tennis to provide a strong base of support to build further skills from. A player's base of support can shift during play, and players will often find themselves having to regain balance during a rally on the table. Jumping and landing, again, very important in table tennis. So since tennis is a sport that requires players to execute quite explosive movements, the ability to jump and land correctly are key skills, as quicker landing to jumping movements will result in more powerful movements. So throwing and catching are again key skills within table tennis. So as they demonstrate the coordination of hand and eye, as well as the ability to react quickly as well. Running and stopping. So table tennis involves significant anaerobic activity that involves a lot of quick starting and stopping during rallies, during matches, during games. And when players are required to alter their speed quite quickly within a very small area as well. And finally, change in direction. So tennis is a sport that involves significant change in direction, constantly moving both laterally but also forward and backwards as well. So players must quickly anticipate where the ball's going and adjust their positioning accordingly, and therefore being quite agile, having the ability to change direction at speed is really, really essential within our sport. Bat skills and coordination. So bat and ball skills, very basic coordination of throwing the ball, on the bat, being able to hold a rally is also very important. So actually, you know, how does the player control that rally? Are they able to manipulate the pace? Feeling in the hand and wrist. So we often describe plays having feeling. It might be a terminology you've heard quite a lot, and it's quite hard to articulate when a player has good feelings. So what we try to do is produce a couple of tasks that might be able to assess this specific skill. And finally, coordination of hands and feet. So obviously, tennis is a sport where the arm and the hand is moving always at the same time simultaneously as the legs and the feet as well. So the behaviours, I won't go through these in detail. I'm going to talk about them on a later slide, but they essentially align with a number of the performance behaviours that we at Tennis England Performance Team have put in place and often discuss with players who are part of our England Talent Pathway. And they are passion, resilience, adaptability, curiosity, and thrives in competitive situations. Okay, so what I've just done here on the next two slides is just to give you a basic example of what to expect when you open the document. So jumping and landing, we use the diamond jump activity. So you'll see there is some written text to tell you exactly what the activity is, and also followed by observations of essentially what good practice might look like for a player doing that activity. So you'll see below just an example of the videos embedded within the document. So it starts with an introduction. It's followed by Gordon Firm, who very kindly assisted me in producing the content for this framework, explaining what the activity is, and has a player demonstrate that. And then finally, we cut to some scenes of players we believe are doing the activity particularly well. So you can see yourself what essentially good in this activity might specifically look like. Again, here's just an example from B number 2, which is bat skills and coordination. So feeling in the hand and wrist, the task is called 1, 2, 3 bounce. It's all about essentially being able to pick the ball up after multiple bounces on the table. And essentially, again, players who are good at this task will be able to easily pick up that bounce after 3 balls. And that is demonstrated within the videos, again, in the same format. So the introduction, Gordon explaining the activity, followed by a child who's able to execute that activity pretty well. So when it comes to behaviours, as I discussed, physical skills are not the only important attribute when it comes to identifying players with potential. The behaviours that players demonstrate are equally as important and can indicate how well a player may thrive within a competitive talent pathway environment. So just one example that I've given here are thrives in competitive situations. So what observations could be made that indicate that a player is showing signs of thriving in competitive situations? So just some key questions that you as a deliverer or observer within the room might ask yourself. So for example, is the player not put off by challenges that involve competing against other players? Do they remain focused on the task and have a desire to win? Is the player just focused on winning a task, but also do they have their own targets that they're setting themselves? Ask them these questions. So what you might want to do is turn some of the activities, as outlined on the slide, into competitive scenarios, so you can assess whether you feel a player might hold this specific behaviour or not. Okay, the last thing to consider for me is just some key factors to consider when you are running your Talent ID days where you might actually be using this framework or assessing players in some format. Just a few things for you to be aware of. So the first one is to use any framework as a guide and not as exclusion criteria, as I outlined at the start. So it's not expected that every young player taking part in these activities will be able to perform them all perfectly. That's in an ideal world, this would happen, but of course it's not always going to happen. Simply use the framework as a guide to help indicate whether a young person has the appropriate skills and characteristics, and maybe continue their Terminus journey into perhaps a talent development environment, a specific club session, whatever that might specifically be. So it's not to discount, but really, again, please use any framework that you see as a guide. The next point is there are no exact benchmarks due to the range in growth and maturation. So there aren't really any specific benchmarks or targets that should be put on players that would put them in a category above others. Use the observations detailed across each section to use your own judgment in this sense. It's important to remember that children grow and mature at very, very different rates. Sometimes a child that is taller and stronger can maybe appear more competent at a specific task than a less developed child at the same age. So it's just keeping that in the back of your mind as an important factor to consider. So thirdly, relative age effect can impact when we select in talent identification. So we talk about relative age effect. It's essentially a phenomenon in which children both born in or close to a critical age cut-off period may actually have an advantage when it comes to being selected for sports programs or identified as high potential. So, for example, young people born in that first quartile of the year, so maybe that's September to November, that first academic quartile, so the Terminus England domestic season also runs from September as well, typically may have an advantage over those born in the latter two quartiles, simply because of the increased time they've had to develop. So again, maybe something just to keep in the back of your mind when executing talent identification. And finally, technical aspects are not as important when searching for talent. So looking for good technique in the young players isn't actually essential at this very, very young age. Good technique takes time to develop. It takes a huge amount of repetition. So there are certain aspects that make top players, that you simply just can't teach. And yes, although technique is important, obviously at this stage, players may not have been exposed to coaching sessions which enable them to actually have good technical table tennis ability. So again, just want to consider there. So at the end of the document, you will see a recommended equipment list. There's quite a lot of different equipment used across the framework. Be flexible and adaptable where you can. Where you don't have that equipment, feel free to adapt tasks as you see fit. But yeah, that is essentially everything. It's just a quick whistle stop tour of the 3 Bs, why we designed it, and also when and how you might want to use it. So please do take a look. All of the videos are embedded in the PDF document, but they're also hosted on the Terminus England YouTube page as well. Just like to thank Gordon Firm for helping me to design the framework and also film the activity, which was kindly filmed at Drake on Long Eaton Table Tennis Club as well. So please, yeah, I'd like to thank their support in the process as well. So if you do have any questions on the framework, please do get in contact with the performance@terminusengland.co.uk email address, and we will endeavour to support you and help with this where we can. So thank you, everyone.